welcome to the Flightcast, a place where opinions aren't right or wrong, and where we can agree or disagree about movies, TV, and other assorted media because it's all subjective. My name is Ray. Thank you so much for joining me. It's December 10th. It's not as cold as it has been in the last week or so here in the Midwest, but it's about to get colder. And we have been losing daylight consistently for the last couple of months, which I absolutely hate. But not to worry, because in 11 days, we're going to start gaining daylight again. It's going to be our darkest day of the year on the 21st. It happens every year, a couple of days before Christmas, a couple of days before my birthday. And then we're going to start gaining daylight again. I cannot wait for that shit, I tell you what. But you know what? Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. Obviously, it's been a minute since I've recorded a particular episode of this show, because holy shit, real life just messes with you a lot. You know, you just have some shit that you got to deal with on the outside, right? We all know that. And it's been a stressful 3, 4, 5 weeks for those of us, especially living in the good old United States of America, for many reasons that I talked about in my last episode that had definitely some ramifications, negative or otherwise, on Hollywood potentially in the future. But you know what? Here's the deal. There's one thing in particular that I want to talk about in this episode, and we're going to do something a bit different going forward with respect to the format of this show. Basically, I have one statement to make, and I am going to prove my statement almost objectively correct. You know, not really objectively correct, because of course, it's all subjective. This is my opinion and mine alone. You are welcome to disagree with this opinion if you choose. Maybe you agree with this particular opinion, but I am just presenting my own subjective opinion on this statement right here and now. Before I do that, of course, I have to remind everybody that hopefully you found this particular podcast at theflightcast.com, my website, which features my on-again, off-again blog and all the episodes of my shows that I do for theflightcast.com. You can also find this on BLUESKY. I mentioned earlier that I'm totally on BLUESKY now. I have abandoned most social media. I've abandoned Facebook. I've abandoned Instagram. I abandoned Twitter a year and a half ago. You don't have to worry about that flippin' cesspool. BLUESKY is where you can find me. Flightcast, it's easy to find me. And quite honestly, it's been a lot nicer and a lot friendlier and not the ridiculous echo chamber that some people would have you believe. I mean, all social media at the end of the day is an echo chamber of some sort, but this is a good one. This is a healthy one. This is a positive one, at least from what I've seen for now, until it eventually gets corrupted, because that's usually what happens to social media networks. But that's where you can find me at this point in time. And of course, I want to take a moment to thank those of you that are still left at patreon.com/theflightcast. Thank you very much. There's actually something that I swear by hook or crook I'm going to do starting this Friday with respect to Patreon that you might want to stay tuned to. And those of you that are not members of Patreon, well, I'm going to be posting the links to it on my BLUESKY account and probably on the Facebook account. Yes, I abandoned my personal Facebook, but the Facebook page for the Flightcast is still up because there were a decent amount of people that followed it, and I didn't just want to abandon that completely. But I don't post personal shit on Facebook anymore. But at any rate, stay tuned, because there is seriously something that I've been wanting to do for a minute, and it was an idea that popped into my head. I have a list, and I'm checking it twice, pun intended, for something that I'm going to be doing for the Christmas season, if you will, starting this Friday at patreon.com/theflightcast. If you are a member, thank you so much for your patience. Thank you so much for your patronage. Stay tuned for that. If you're not a member, you might want to be a little interested in what I'm going to be doing, if, in fact, Christmas movies are an interest to you. So, just stay tuned for that this particular Friday at patreon.com/theflightcast. All right, all the particulars are out of the way. Oh, one other thing before I get into the business of this particular episode. I did want to mention that Scott and I over at Squadcast Media have been resurrecting DCTV Squadcast. We've been recording episodes over there. We talked about my adventures with Superman after I got caught up with that. And week by week, we were talking about the Penguin, which I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, to be honest with you, because it's been getting some accolades or some more praise, if you will, and potentially some official hardware praise, if you will. But we talked about that episode by episode over at squadcastmedia.com on DCTV Squadcast. And next up, we are going to be finally discussing Superman and Lois because the fourth and final season of that show ended, about a week ago? Yeah, a little over a week ago, to be honest with you. And then after that, I'm pretty sure we'll offer some thoughts on Creature Commandos because the DCU has officially launched. I'll talk about that in a little bit as well. But for those of you that are interested in our thoughts with respect to DC TV, go ahead and go over to squadcastmedia.com and listen to DC TV Squadcast because, again, we are back over there recording episodes here and there. All right. Now, for the purposes of today's show and going forward, here is my subjective statement for the day for this particular episode that I'm going to make. You are welcome to agree or disagree with me as much as you like with respect to what I'm about to say, but I am going to prove beyond the shadow of a doubt, at least from my subjective perspective, that this statement I am about to make is 100% true, at least in my world and from my reality. And that statement is the following. There's entirely too much shit to watch. Seriously. I'm going to repeat that because it bears repeating. There is entirely too much shit to watch. There really is. And, I can actually touch upon each and every one of my fandoms in order to prove my point on this. Because don't you just get overwhelmed? Don't you just sit in front of your computer screen, in front of your television, in front of your phone, your iPad, whatever the hell it is that you watch your media on? Don't you just have moments where you're just like, what the hell am I going to watch today? Because there's this, there's that, there's this, there's that. I know a lot of you are like, well, I don't watch everything. There's only a couple of things that I really feel strongly about watching. Well, you know what? Good for you. I appreciate that you have the wherewithal and the restraint to just go ahead and say, I'm going to skip this and I'm going to skip that. There are those of us that like a lot of shit. There are those of us that have wider strike zones than that. And you know how many fandoms I enjoy. And those of you who have been listening to this show for any lengthy period of time, you know about the list. You know damn well how big the list is. And many of you have told me there's no way that I'm going to finish it alive. There's no way that I'm going to actually get through all of it. And you know what? You might be right. You might actually be right. Because there's just entirely too much shit to watch. There's too much old shit to watch that isn't out anymore that I haven't finished. There's too much middle shit that's finishing now to watch. There's too much shit that's continuing to go on to watch, right? With respect to movies and television. And I'm going to prove it by going through each and every one of my favorite franchises. And I'm going to start with my favorite franchise in the world, Star Trek. I've mentioned on more than one occasion that if there was any franchise in the world that I would watch more than anything else, that they told me, Ray, for the rest of your life, there's only one franchise you can ever watch again, I would cut them off mid-sentence and say Star Trek. Absolutely. And not just because of the 56 plus years of movies and television shows and all manner. I mean, we're talking hundreds of hours of content, if you will, with respect to this show. And that's just the official stuff. Never mind the fan stuff. Never mind the alternate timelines, whatever. Yes, it is my number one favorite franchise in the world. And I am behind. Why? Because a couple of weeks ago, in fact, actually it was about 2 months ago or so, right? Star Trek Lower Decks Season 5 started. And I have watched none of it. Absolutely none of it. It's not a difficult show to watch. They're 22-minute animated episodes. And they're almost done, right? They're to the point where I think there's like 1 or 2 episodes left before the 5th and final season of Mike McMahon's brilliant show, starring Tawny Newsome and Jack Quaid and Dawn Lewis and so many other talented voice actors. Like, that fantastic show, the Star Trek animated sitcom that I never knew I needed, is almost over. Like, completely over and done with, and I have watched none of it. Because I haven't had time to just sit down and do it, right? When you have, like, paralysis, if you will, sometimes, like mental paralysis, where you're just, like, you're overwhelmed by how much shit you have to watch. And that was the first thing that popped up, is like, Star Trek. Crap, I'm caught up on all the live-action shows, right? I'm caught up on Strange New Worlds. I'm caught up on Picard, obviously. That went 3 seasons, right? I finished Discovery. I own Discovery. I have all 5 seasons of the entire show of Star Trek Discovery. I also have, like, both of the first 2 seasons of Strange New Worlds, and I don't know if there's a premiere date for season 3 yet. But I haven't got caught up on Lower Decks. And I'm at that point now where, you know what? I'm just going to wait until the last 2 episodes are released, and then I'm going to binge all of it in like a couple of hours. Because it doesn't take that long to binge the show. It's 10 episode seasons, like I said, like 22, 24 minutes an episode. It's not going to take me that long, but I haven't been able to get to it. I have not been able to get to it because it's like, well, do I begin with that? And if I watch that, well, what about everything else that I'm watching? Because I was in the middle of trying to get caught up on Superman and Lois over on the DC side, and there was this, we were in the middle of watching The Penguin. It's like, I don't have time. Where do I have time between this and work and everything else in life to be able to watch this show? So I am vastly behind as far as this particular season, the 5th and final season, which I've heard is amazing. I've done my best to try and stay out of spoiler range with anything going on in the final season of this show, but it's there on the list, unwatched as far as this season, and I'm going to wait until it's over and then binge through all of it. But beyond that, I've also been seeing people on Blue Sky post about Star Trek Prodigy. You remember Star Trek Prodigy? That was the Nickelodeon kids animated Star Trek series. The first season premiered on Nickelodeon, it was canceled, and then it was resurrected by Netflix for a season 2. Both seasons, if I'm not mistaken, are on Netflix, and they've also got physical Blu-ray releases, if I'm not mistaken as well. I have watched none of that show. And I have been told, at least I've read from people, that it is the true spiritual successor, the true sequel to Star Trek Voyager. And I enjoyed Star Trek Voyager. It's one of those shows that I would like to revisit. But I did follow that show. I did watch that show, like as far as, not religiously. I mean, I was balancing it between that and Deep Space Nine because they were on at the same time. Did I enjoy Deep Space Nine more even back then? Yes, I did. But Voyager is a show that I do enjoy. I mean, look, you're not going to... I don't gatekeep Star Trek. I don't gatekeep any franchises or fandoms anyway, but I certainly don't gatekeep Star Trek. It's all valid. It's all fantastic. I enjoy all of it. One day I would like to revisit it, but this idea that people have talked about how amazing Kate Mulgrew has been as Janeway in Star Trek Prodigy. They've talked about how awesome these characters are, how awesome those characters are, and I've been told, like coworkers, like I have a coworker who's also a huge Trekkie. Got a couple of coworkers and my boss who are Trekkies, and they're just like, oh, you got to watch it. You've got to watch it. You've got to move it up higher on your list. I know, I get it, I understand, I realize that. It's just a lot, man. It's 2 seasons. And I know it's an animated series. I know it's made for kids. Who gives a shit if it's made for kids or not? Technically, Star Trek, the animated series, the Filmation stuff from the 70s was made for kids. I don't care. I own the whole damn show. Seriously. I am Trekkie number 1. I am one of the biggest Trekkies you could possibly find on this earth. And yet I am behind on both of the animated series. And no, I am not anti-animation. Most certainly I am not. I am not one of those types of elitists. In fact, I thoroughly enjoy the fact that I think both of these shows are considered canon within the Star Trek universe. I love that. I just need to find time to get caught up on it. And you know what? I gotta hurry, because apparently I've only got, little over a month and a half before the Section 31 movie comes out. And I saw the trailer for that. The first trailer for Section 31 dropped, I want to say, a couple days ago on Sunday. And I saw some people commenting on this saying, well, this is really not the exact concept that they came up with in Deep Space Nine. That was more of a clandestine cell-like group that, operated in the shadows and was dark. And this just looks like Suicide Squad for Star Trek. And I'm like, oh, okay, listen. Are we really going to nitpick this? I guess we are. And you know what? If that's how you want to feel about it, that's your business. But first and foremost, anything that stars Michelle Yeoh gets my attention. Period. I love the fact that she is not only part of the Star Trek universe, but that she is a popular part of the Star Trek universe. Before she won her Oscar that she absolutely gloriously deserved in Everything Everywhere All at Once, she made her mark in the Star Trek universe as the badass Philippa Georgiou, and yes, it was sad that Prime Georgiou, met her end, but Emperor Georgiou from the Mirror Universe, sorry, spoilers for Star Trek Discovery, my bad for anybody that hasn't watched that show yet. Emperor Georgiou, badass, outstanding, loved her character in the time that she spent on Star Trek Discovery. And Section 31 is a spin-off story following her. We thought it was going to be a show. It's going to be a movie, a Paramount Plus movie. The trailer looks awesome. The trailer looks like it's in the same vein, the same world as Star Trek Discovery, and I thoroughly enjoyed Star Trek Discovery. I'm perfectly fine with that. This whole new Trek thing that, a lot of the more toxic gatekeepers have been spewing that I've actively been, fighting against for the last couple of years, I enjoy it. I thoroughly enjoy it. You'd be hard-pressed to find Star Trek that I don't enjoy, and I did see somebody post on Blue Sky the other day, post a Trek episode that is your least favorite, but say one nice thing about it. I saw some great votes. I saw votes for Code of Honor, TNG. I saw votes for Shades of Grey, TNG. Oh, those are two horrific episodes, subjectively speaking. But you know what? Even on their worst days, I would still take the worst episodes of Star Trek over some of the best episodes of other things, subjectively speaking. That's how much I love the franchise. So I will most certainly be front and center for that Section 31 movie, and I will most certainly watch it, and I will most certainly review it. I am excited for that, but at some point, I'm going to see if I can get caught up on Lower Decks and Prodigy before that movie comes out. And when does that movie come out here? Let me double check that release date. January 24th, exclusively on Paramount Plus. So yes, a straight-to-streaming film. But if you've watched Star Trek Discovery, if you've watched Star Trek Strange New Worlds, then you should not have any questions about the budget. You should not have any questions about visual effects, because both of those shows gorgeous. And so was Picard. Picard was also gorgeous. I don't care how many people were nitpicking and complaining about all the copies of the ships in the Starfleet that Riker was leading at the end of season 1. I don't care. I do not care. I love Star Trek. It is gorgeous. It is fantastic. Can't wait for this. So, at some point in the next month and a half, I'm going to be binging a ton of Star Trek, hopefully. First, Lower Decks, Season 5, to finish that glorious show and say goodbye to my favorite characters, Bradward Boimler, Ensign Beckett Mariner, and their friends, Samantha Rutherford and Devana Tendi, Captain Carol Freeman, Shax, Dr. Ta'ana, Jack Ransom, everybody. I really have enjoyed that show. That show is awesome. So I got to get caught up on that. I finally have to get caught up on Star Trek Prodigy and get through that, and then the Section 31 movie. So I have a lot of Star Trek watching to do in the not too distant future, and I really need to hold myself to that seriously, because there's just too much shit to watch. But anyway, that's everything on the Star Trek front. But what about my second favorite franchise in the world? That would be DC Comics. Yes. Where am I at with that? Well, I did get caught up on Superman and Lois. I actually watched seasons 3 and 4 of Superman and Lois not too recently, to be honest with you. Or I guess pretty recently. And like I said, my thoughts on that show, you'll be able to listen to those pretty soon on DC TV Squadcast. Me and Scott over there at squadcastmedia.com will be talking about it. But I haven't watched the premiere of Creature Commandos yet. You would think that I had. But, like I said, we were in the middle of live watching The Penguin, weekly. And then Superman and Lois came up. I had to finish that. And so Creature Commandos, if I'm not mistaken, premiered the day after, the first 2 episodes premiered the day after Superman and Lois ended. And I think by now there's been, 3 or 4 episodes of Creature Commandos that have been posted on Max? I think so. I'm not certain about that. But I'm behind. And this is kind of a big deal, right? It's the unofficial soft launch of the DCU, right? Everybody's talking about canon, and let me just talk about that for a second, because I'm seeing this a lot on Reddit. I'm seeing this a lot online. People that are asking, yes, I'm on Reddit, by the way. Yes, the DC Cinematic Reddit, yes, I've posted a few things on it, and I realize that Reddit is a cesspool. I know that, and I'm really trying to avoid toxic elements. There's already one DC group that has banned me from it because, well, they were morons, and they deleted one of my posts, and I did not like them for that, and so we got into a bit of a pissing contest, and you know what? They're good riddance to bad rubbish. I don't give a shit about them. The DC Cinematic Reddit is a lot better, at least from what I follow. I try not to read any ridiculousness, although some of it does cross my eye, but I'm still seeing a lot of people that are trying to sort out the canon of the DCU, and I saw this post. Somebody was like, so how much of the DCEU should I watch in order to prepare for the DCU? And my answer, I saw all these people, first, before I gave my answer, I saw all these people that were like, well, you should watch Suicide Squad, you should watch The Suicide Squad, and then you should watch Birds of Prey, and you should watch this, whatever, and Peacemaker Season 1, and just remember that it's this, and that it's that, and maybe watch Aquaman or whatever. They were giving them this homework assignment to prepare themselves for canon in the DCU. And you know what? I'm going to read you verbatim exactly what my response was to this question. Because again, this person asked, do I need to watch anything before James Gunn's soft reboot of the new DCU? And after a couple of days, I saw people's other responses, my response was very simple. I said, no, it's not a soft reboot, no matter what anyone says here. The only thing in question at all is Peacemaker Season 1, and that's negligible. We are massively overthinking this because we're fans, and yes, we are massively overthinking it. There is no homework assignments for this. We've been over this, guys. And I don't know if anybody here agrees or disagrees with this or has been massively overthinking it themselves, but there is no homework assignment. You do not have to watch anything. Now, odds are, if you're listening to this show, you've watched a decent amount of the DCEU. You've watched The Suicide Squad. You've watched Peacemaker Season 1. You've watched enough of the other movies that you like and even some of the ones that you don't like. So you don't really need to do a rewatch because it's already in your head. But you know that we don't have a homework assignment when it comes to the DCU. It doesn't matter what is canon in Season 1 of Peacemaker or not. We know that it's starting new with Creature Commandos, which is going to go into Superman next year, and that's going to roll into Peacemaker Season 2. We know this already, okay? We know about the Waller show. We know about Green Lantern. We know about all of this. We're starting over. This is not a soft reboot. People are trying to call it, fans, I should say, not people. Fans are trying to call it a soft reboot because apparently there's going to be, it's not going to completely erase the DCEU. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Just because Gunn is carrying over characters from Peacemaker that, may or may not have been in the Suicide Squad movie that he did doesn't mean that it's not a hard reboot. Superman is different. The Justice League is going to be different. If and when we see the Justice League, we're going to see the Green Lanterns, right? We're going to see things that we did not see officially in the DCEU. Stop making it harder on yourselves and just make the clean break. And it's funny that I'm saying that because I'm pretty sure a couple of years ago when I was arguing against a hard reboot, I was saying, well, this could still remain and that could still remain and this could still be this and that could still be that. And I wanted that to be the case because I didn't want all of the elements that had already been established that I enjoyed in the DCEU to just get thrown away. But then after the decisions had been made, after DC Studios was formed, and after James Gunn and Peter Safran were put in charge, I had to accept it. And I had to say, okay, it's a new day. It's a new era. They're starting over. They're starting clean. Fine. Clean break. Whatever. We said our goodbyes to the DCEU last year. The farewell tour, which didn't do well at the box office with the possible exception of Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, it was the end of it. That's it. There's no more. Okay? I don't care what they're saying about Blue Beetle. I don't care what they're saying about anything that Gunn was connected to or anything that he announced. This is a clean break. It's not a soft reboot. Okay, if you want to call it a not rock hard reboot, right? If you want to call it a less hard reboot, that's fine. But it's still pretty much a hard reboot, guys. Come on now. Why are we making this more difficult on ourselves? I know why. Because we're fans. And canon is this word that we just cling to. We've got to know what connects. We've got to know what's important. We've got to know what to remember. We don't want to miss any context. You know who doesn't give a shit about context? The general audience. The general audience right now, any of them that are watching Creature Commandos, are like, oh, what's this crazy new cartoon on Max that I'm going to watch? Is it anything like Harley Quinn? Is it connected to that? They might have passing fancy questions about that, but they couldn't care less with respect to that. And when Superman does drop, and I know we're not getting a trailer at CCXP. I guess reportedly Gunn said that we're not getting a trailer for it at CCXP. Whatever. We know we're getting a trailer in the not too distant future, and we know we're all going to see it, right? But when that movie releases and the general audience goes to see it, the last thing that they're going to be worried about is whether or not David Corenswet is just another version of Henry Cavill. Somebody might look at the trunks and go, oh wait, maybe it's connected to Christopher Reeve, but it's not going to be high on the priority list for anybody in the general audience. So why is it high on the priority list for us? Why is the general audience able to detach themselves from canon better than we are? Because they don't overthink things. They don't need everything to be incredibly connected. And I know I heard that story. I think Dave, Film Junkie, who I just talked to him a month or so ago because we did the thing for Geek Ultimate Alliance, the charity thing that we do every year. But I haven't been on Vodka Stream in a long time. But I know that I'm still on his Patreon. I still subscribe to his Patreon. I know he was talking about that story where Gunn admitted that he did consider incorporating Robert Pattinson's Batman into the DCU. He didn't, though, because he believes in Elseworld storytelling, and I applaud him for that, and I'm glad that he feels that way, because I'm tired of people suggesting that that's supposed to be connected. Not everything is supposed to be flippin' connected. And your brain, more than anybody else's, can handle two different Batman at the same time. You can. Don't tell me that you can't. If you can't, you're saying that you won't. You're saying that you're deciding not to. The general audience is going to be just fine. They're going to have Robert Pattinson's Batman over here in the Batman Epic Crime Saga. And they'll have whoever he's going to be in Batman the Brave and the Bold, provided that Superman does well, and provided that the DCU has solid footing with respect to where they're going to go down the road and in the not too distant future, right? They're going to be fine. It's you, the fan, us as fans, that make things more difficult on ourselves. We stand in our way when it comes to our own way in terms of enjoying any of these projects, any of these franchises, any of these characters. It's silly. It's ridiculous. It's a waste of time, in my subjective opinion. You know what's not a waste of time, though, as I continue moving down this stream of consciousness with DC thoughts? The fact that The Penguin has been nominated for 3 Golden Globes and 4 Critics' Choice Awards. That's absolutely awesome. It's been nominated for Best Television Limited Series, Best Performance by a Male Actor in a Limited Series, Colin Farrell, and Best Performance by a Female Actor in a Limited Series for Kristen Milioti. It's also been nominated for 4 Critics' Choice Awards, Best Limited Series, Best Actor in a Limited Series, Best Actress in a Limited Series, the aforementioned actors I mentioned, and also Best Supporting Actress in a Limited Series for Deirdre O'Connell, who played Oz's mother, Frances. And those are all fantastic and expected nominations, to be honest with you. Not a single surprise with any of those nominations, and it would not surprise me or any one of us if that show won each and every one of those awards. I don't know that it will, but seriously, as absolutely outstanding as that show was, and with the pedigree that HBO has with respect to these award shows, would not surprise me one bit if it sweeps all of those awards. That'd be great. That'd be fantastic. And wouldn't that say something, right? It's enough for a show like this, a comic book show like this, to get nominated for awards like that. But wouldn't it be something if it actually won? How about that, right? Especially a couple of years after Michael Giacchino got robbed for not even being nominated for his original score in the Academy Awards for The Batman, which I still consider to be his magnum opus. But whatever. Congratulations to the Penguin. Fantastic job. Well-deserved. Hopefully they win some, if not all of those. That would be fantastic, to be honest with you. And, you know, for my stance on award shows, you know, I don't need award shows, but I'll pay attention. I'm curious, you know, to see how it goes. And I'm rooting for Colin, I'm rooting for Kristen, I'm rooting for Lauren LaFranc and everybody else involved in that show. Rooting for them, because I know that would be a huge feather in the cap for all of them. So we'll see how that goes. Let's see what else in terms of DC news I'm looking at here. You know, the story about Superman reportedly undergoing reshoots. Yeah, where'd that come from? One of the regurgitators? And somebody asked Gunn, is there any truth to this? And of course he said, sort of, not a few days. We're doing a day and a half of pickup shots, no scenes, no reshoots, just a handful of individual shots to enhance the film. Yep. And thankfully, James Gunn is somebody that will be vocal about this when somebody asks him a question with respect to the technical process, so that, again, we as fans don't get in our own way again and try to sap our own enthusiasm again and go, oh, wait, reshoots. Remember years ago, this started like 8 or 9 years ago. I feel like BVS was like the flashpoint for this, pun intended for that phrase. I feel like people, that was the beginning of when we started looking at marketing budgets and, you know, breaking even on box office. And oh no, if it means reshoots, then it means it's bad and the studio didn't like it and they're ordering a bunch of changes and they're wrestling away control from the creatives. All this overthinking bullshit that we just consistently inundate ourselves with as fans. And here we go again, the cycle repeating itself. Oh no, Superman is undergoing days of additional shooting. What do they have to fix? What do they have to repair? What did they get wrong? What didn't happen? What went wrong in the test screenings? All that bullshit, man. Seriously, like, why do we overthink this? Why do we look for ways to self-sabotage our enjoyment as fans? We do that on a consistent basis. Just give me the trailer so that I can begin to see whether or not, you know, how much my hype level is going to rise, if at any, for this film, and then give me the film. I'm ready to watch the film. How about that? I don't care whether James Gunn is confirming or denying that Kumail Nanjiani is Booster Gold. When the casting happens, fine. I'll say that. I don't care what stage The Brave and the Bold or The Batman Part 2 is at, because I'm waiting for the DCU to launch. I've got other things to be excited about. Why am I looking 4 and 5 years down the road when I could be looking right in front of me at the not too distant future? Fans always do this. It's exhausting. It's exhausting, and I'm sure many of you probably agree with that. Maybe some of you don't agree with that. Whatever, it is what it is, of course. It is all subjective. Just like this article that popped up a couple of days ago from the Hollywood Reporter. I don't know why anybody is talking to Hollywood Reporter. Who is Ryan Gajewski? Why this article about David Ayer defending his push for the director's cut of Suicide Squad. Quote, "Judge, once you have all the information." This came across the DC Cinematic Reddit as well. He said, he posted on X, formerly Twitter. No, it's still Twitter. What the hell? He says, "I hope my real film can be shared one day. I appreciate the continued support and interest." And once again, posting the hashtag release the Ayer cut. It says, when a social media user responded that Ayer wouldn't need to release his own cut if the original film had been strong on its own, the filmmaker replied, quote, "The best version simply has not been seen. I know how difficult it is for someone outside the industry to comprehend how insanely different two cuts of a film can be. If you dislike what you've seen, here's an opportunity to see what I actually intended, and then judge once you have all the information." You know what? And I will say this. First of all, I'm glad that David Ayer said that, because I 100% agree with that. But seriously, for anybody that is still trolling, and that person more than likely was just a toxic troll, because that's all Twitter is filled with now, toxic ass trolls and Nazis and horrible, disgusting people. I digress. But anybody that is still arguing, even that they're legitimately arguing that if Ayer's original cut of Suicide Squad had been strong enough, then it would have been released originally. Anybody that is still buying that bullshit, especially after what we went through with Zack Snyder's Justice League, if you're still deluding yourself with that nonsense, that's on you. And you can just go ahead and join the ranks of the idiocracy movement that festoons this particular country. And really the planet, to be honest with you. Because that's insane to me. Literally what David Ayer just said. The idea of how insanely different two cuts of a film can be. We literally have an actual, objectively tactile reference for this. Justice League, 2017 theatrical version of Justice League, and Zack Snyder's Justice League 2021 released on then HBO Max, now Max. Those two cuts could not be more polar opposites of each other. It doesn't matter that it's the same storyline. It doesn't matter that there's elements here and shots there that were used in both those. They're both extremely different cuts, and not just in terms of length. Yes, Justice League is an hour and 59 minutes or whatever the hell it is, under 2 hours. And yes, Zack Snyder's Justice League is 4 hours and 2 minutes. But anybody with a rational mind that watched both movies knows how different they both are, and knows that they're not nearly as identical. They're not the same film. They are vastly different. And if there's that much of a difference, and I'm not saying necessarily that there's that much of a difference, but if there's even half of that amount of difference, the difference between Justice League and Zack Snyder's Justice League, if there's even half of that difference between Studio Squad that was released in 2016, as I call it, and David Ayer's Suicide Squad version, then what the hell? Like, that is not an insane thing to comprehend. And this idea, if it was strong enough, it would have been released. Yeah, really? Anybody that enjoys Zack Snyder's Justice League more than Justice League, you know that's bullshit. You know that these studios do things for idiotic reasons. You know they make stupid decisions. You know they make decisions against their own interests because they want to be the smartest guys in the room, and we defy the audience because we know what the audience actually wants. No, the hell you don't. You throw stuff out there for consumption, then we tell you what it is that we like. And the marketing and whatnot is supposed to sell us on that. If you don't do a good job with that, which you didn't back in the days of DC Films, that rinky-dink operation under Warner Brothers Picture Group, then it's not going to work out. But seriously, anybody that's still arguing that it couldn't possibly be that different, you're either deliberately trolling, or you're being deliberately delusional and deliberately ignorant, or you're just ignorant in general in that regard, and it's funny because it's like, it's not like Studio Squad didn't make money. It made a ton of money. It made nearly $750 million, despite Rotten Tomatoes firebombing it. The general audience still enjoyed it. And I'm not going to knock Ayer for still wanting that version of it released. I still want it released. I'm not necessarily posting hashtag release the Ayer cut like I used to. And yeah, it's probably at this point on, the Donner cut track, if you will. If we ever see David Ayer's Suicide Squad, it's going to be a number of years from now. It is. And it's going to be something that, James Gunn and Peter Safran, or whoever is in charge of DC Studios at the time, is going to decide to unearth and, They're like, oh, here, let's throw this out there and talk about the story of the Suicide Squad or whatever, right? The film back then, it'll have to achieve like Donner cut status at this point, which it very well could. I'm not saying that it can't. It very well could, but David Ayer can still push for that and still hope that we get to see his original version. I would love to see his original version, to be honest with you. I would love to see the differences. I would love to know what his original vision was before Warner Brothers decided to order 6 weeks of reshoots to inject humor and then give it to a trailer company to cut for final approval. It's amazing how many people still don't want to buy how batshit Hollywood is when it comes to their operations, right? Is that everything with respect to DC? It brings me back to my original point about how I am still not caught up. I haven't watched any of Creature Commandos yet. I am still behind because, again, my thesis of this episode, there's too much shit to watch. And I can go to my next favorite franchise to continue proving this thesis statement that there's too much shit to watch. Star Wars. Because have I watched Skeleton Crew yet? No, I haven't. I have not watched Skeleton Crew yet. That premiered. 2-episode premiere, if I'm not mistaken. I have not watched any of Skeleton Crew yet. And mind you, I'm somebody that for the last number of Star Wars shows has been watching live, if you will. Okay, I watched The Book of Boba Fett live. I watched Ahsoka live. I watched Obi-Wan Kenobi live. I watched The Mandalorian, mostly, with the exception of Season 3, live. I watched The Acolyte, and loved it, by the way, live. At some point, I will watch Skeleton Crew and get caught up and hopefully continue to watch it live. But I haven't been able to get to it yet. In fact, I am so behind on Star Wars content in general that not only have I not watched any of Skeleton Crew yet, I haven't played Star Wars Outlaws yet. Star Wars Outlaws, and listen, don't get me started on the list with respect to video games because I'm still trying to figure out when I'm going to be able to sit down and actually get through Grand Theft Auto 5. Yes, that's right. For everybody that's been waiting for Grand Theft Auto 6, I still haven't played Grand Theft Auto 5. I own it. I have it in my possession for Xbox Series X. And the 5 minutes of it that I played looked gorgeous, and I can't wait to play it at some point. But when the hell am I going to find time to play that? And then on top of that, when am I going to find time to play Star Wars Outlaws? The game looks amazing. No, I don't care about people's complaints about loading screens. No, I don't care about people's nitpicks with respect to characters and canon, whatever. And no, I really don't care about anybody that's upset that it has a female protagonist. I could give less than two shits about those wastes of space. At some point, I do want to play it, though. And at some point, I do need to watch Skeleton Crew. But holy shit, there's just too much shit to watch. Which is why I'm also not upset when I see these reports. Well, Disney pulls 2026 Star Wars movie from release calendar. That was what, like a month ago that got posted on the Reddit? People still bitching and complaining about Disney Star Wars and all these arguments. Which era do you like? Well, here's what's wrong with the shows, and here's what's wrong with the movies, and here's why they can't get the Rey movie off the ground, and here's why this movie won't work, and here's why that movie won't work, and we're just waiting for the Mandalorian and the Grogu, but that's going to be forever. I don't care. I really don't. I'm willing to be patient, especially with Star Wars. I have more than enough to enjoy with respect to Star Wars. How do I not? Like, come on. Like, this is where I feel like sometimes fans can just get greedy and impatient. And impatience is just, that is a hallmark of fandom. We're always impatient with respect to content. But again, somebody like me that has a wide strike zone has been rather content with respect to Star Wars content over the last couple of years because I've enjoyed all the shows. There has not been a single Star Wars show that is released that I have not enjoyed. And I don't have any of the steelbooks yet. I will. I most certainly will. Quite honestly, I've been a little surprised at the ones they released. I knew that the first two waves that they were doing with the first two seasons of The Mandalorian and also with Obi-Wan Kenobi and season 1 of Andor, I was like, okay, yeah, no, those are some of the more popular ones, right? I know Obi-Wan Kenobi, had all the controversy, whether it was the shit with Moses Ingram, which was bullshit, all that racist nonsense, or the people complaining about Vader and what was going on with Leia and all that, whatever, it doesn't matter. It was one of the more popular live-action Star Wars shows, right? So I wasn't surprised that those were released, but I was a little surprised that they decided to go ahead and do a steelbook for Ahsoka, even though I thoroughly enjoyed that show. I know that not everybody did, right? I really liked it, and, can't wait to see where it goes forward. And, Mandalorian Season 3, which, of course, was, I think, even I might agree that was probably the weakest of the three Mandalorian seasons. It is what it is. Still enjoyed it, right? But the only live action Disney Plus Star Wars show outside of the Acolyte, which if that gets a steelbook, please, the maker, whoever it is, the universe, please get them to release a steelbook of the Acolyte. Please let that happen. Oh, I can't. Oh, please. That would be poetic justice in many forms if that were to happen. I hope it does. I hope it absolutely does, right? Because I want to see that, and I want to see a steelbook for the Book of Boba Fett, because I am one of those people that likes the Book of Boba Fett. And I know that even more so than the Acolyte, that's probably the one that is even more despised by all of the bigots and all of the racists and all the idiot, toxic members of the Star Wars fandom that don't belong in any fandom, let alone the Star Wars fandom, right? I would love to see both of those shows get a steelbook release. Hopefully they're in wave 4. Hopefully. I sincerely hope so. Really hope that happens. But I don't have all of them yet, but I have enjoyed all of them to this point. And I'm sure Skeleton Crew, I will probably enjoy that as well when I finally get caught up on it. And that hopefully will be in the not too distant future, to be honest with you. But with respect to Star Wars in general, again, I'm patient. I'm perfectly okay with it. All right. I'm patient for whatever news they have, with respect to where they're going to go with the movies, with respect to what the next show is going to be, when Mandalorian and Grogu. I don't care if that comes out in 2026 or not. It is what it is. Take your time, do what you got to do. It's not like I don't have plenty of other Star Wars content to enjoy, because I actually like all of it. And maybe that's the issue with a lot of Star Wars fans. Maybe the reason that you're so impatient, maybe the reason that you're so upset is because you can't bring yourself to enjoy the majority of the franchise. You got to stick with whatever it was you grew up with, whether it's the original trilogy, whether it's the prequels, or maybe, and I don't know anybody like this, but maybe there's somebody that is gatekeeping the sequel trilogy to the point where they don't like the others and they're being defensive now. Maybe it's something, of their version of the Snyder nut jobs, right? Perhaps, I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. It seems like fandoms are capable of splintering into any number of toxic gatekeeping groups in that regard. The point is, I'm not a member of any of them, and because I have a wide strike zone with Star Wars, I can enjoy all of it, and I can find all manner of patience for Lucasfilm to do whatever it is they're going to do going down the road. I'm okay. Do what you got to do, Kathleen Kennedy. Do what you got to do, before they once again tell us that you're fired and that Filoni and Favreau are going to be the white male saviors of the franchise. They've been telling us that for however long, right? It is what it is. I'm fine with it because I can go back and enjoy any bit of Star Wars that I want, animated or live action in that regard. So I'm good, but I got to get caught up on Skeleton Crew. I haven't watched any of it yet because, of course, there's entirely too much shit to watch. Hey, you want to guess which franchise I'm going to next? That's right, Marvel. I haven't watched Agatha All Along yet. Nope, absolutely didn't. Because at the time, that show decided it was going to release during the time of the Penguin. And I had to make a choice. And of course, I chose DC over Marvel because I have a bias for DC over Marvel. I do. I enjoy both. But I've made it abundantly clear over the last number of years that I most definitely prefer, especially a Batman series, right? A series set in the world of Gotham City without question. And don't give me the semantics. Batman wasn't even in it. Don't give me that bullshit, okay? The Penguin obviously is connected. It's part of the Batman epic crime saga. It's a Batman series, or at least it's connected to that world. Of course, I'm going to pick that over a Marvel show. And granted, I do want to see Agatha All Along, and it's not like I've just been completely remiss of the Marvel series. However, I do have a backlog, because not only have I not watched Agatha All Along, I still haven't watched She-Hulk, I haven't watched Echo, and I didn't watch the last season of Hawkeye. Now, I don't know what happened with respect to Hawkeye, or the last episode of Hawkeye is what I mean to say. I watched, Hawkeye was 6 episodes, and they've released that in glorious steelbook form as well. And for some reason, I just stopped at episode 5. It wasn't that I didn't like the show. I did enjoy the show. But once the Kingpin reveal happened, I forget what happened. I don't know. I got distracted. Other shit was going on. I just never watched the final episode of the show. So I didn't finish it. I'd still need to finish said show. And I will at some point. I don't know if I need to rewatch the rest of the show. Maybe I'll do that at some point. And I know I've talked about this. I know I've been spouting about this at some point. I'm going to do the Great MCU rewatch. It's a lot. It is. It's a lot. It's 34 movies now, if you count Deadpool and Wolverine, and then all the shows, right? So it's a WandaVision, uh, Loki season 1 and 2. Oh, there's another one I haven't watched. Loki season 2. Okay, so let's recap here. I haven't watched the last episode of Hawkeye. I haven't watched She-Hulk. I haven't watched Loki season 2. And I haven't watched Agatha All Along. Is that it? Oh, did I say Echo? Did I? Okay, one more time. Loki season 2, She-Hulk, Echo, Agatha All Along, last episode of Hawkeye. Is that everything? I don't know. Whatever. Point is, I'm behind. I am behind on Marvel Cinematic Universe television. And it's not that I don't enjoy the Marvel Cinematic Universe television. Look, I defend Moon Knight. I do. I own Moon Knight. I really like that show. I know a lot of people that didn't care for that show. Whatever. It's all subjective. I really liked Moon Knight. I enjoyed it enough for a number of reasons, not the least of which the cultural significance and all the Egyptian stuff. I really, really liked that part of the show. I enjoyed it enough that I own it, right? Inglorious Steelbook. I also enjoyed The Falcon and The Winter Soldier a lot. And I know that there are definitely some people that do enjoy that show, but I feel like there's a lot of others that are still sleeping on that show. Really liked it. Really enjoyed it, okay? And I really like Loki season 1, right? It's not that I don't want to watch any of these shows, right? Because I know that the easiest thing to say is, well, Ray, if you like the shows, then you would have seen them already. Well, that's a cop-out. That's absolutely a cop-out. Because it's not a question of, well, I don't like them, so I'm not going to watch them. It's a question of, it's now an ever-mounting list. And this is just within Marvel, with all the shows that I haven't watched, right? The reason that I finally got a chance to watch Ms. Marvel, or the reason that I finally sat down to watch Ms. Marvel, is because I wanted to watch it before I saw The Marvels. And I did. And I'm really glad that I did, because I had all the context that I was missing with respect to Kamala Khan's family and everything going on, like, in the show. Like, all of that, like, I had all of that going into the Marvels, and I'm glad that I did, because I wouldn't have enjoyed it as much, because their family is very prevalent in the movie, and yes, it's really a spiritual sequel to that show, to be honest with you. And the show was actually very good. The show was extremely good, again, for cultural reasons, representation matters, all that. Yes, definitely. Thoroughly enjoyed that show. That's the last Marvel Cinematic Universe series that I watched all the way through. It is. I've got some catching up to do, just in the Marvel world. And again, it's not for dislike of what they're doing. It's not because I'm not interested in the shows. It's just, there's a lot. There's a lot to watch. I mean, what? Okay, Hawkeye was 6 episodes. Wasn't She-Hulk 9 episodes? Right? It was 9 episodes. And I know it's a sitcom or whatever, but still, 9 episodes of a time commitment. Echo was like, what, 6 to 8 episodes, something like that? I don't know. Agatha All Along is 6 episodes, but they're not necessarily like the shortest episodes. It's still a time commitment. It's still a lot to go through to just sit down and watch new stuff. And again, when you are, or at least for me, I guess I can only speak for myself, like, when I look at everything that I want to watch, when I look at everything that's on my list that's like active in an active franchise, and I go, well, shit, what am I going to watch first? And the paralyzing happens. It's like, I don't know what to watch next. And then it just becomes uncomfortable. And then I invariably throw in something that I have watched 1,000 times that is comforting to watch, like Frasier. But funny story about that. And this is not even like, I'm still talking about the Marvel stuff here, but like Frasier. I have watched all 11 seasons of that show multiple times, right? It's a comfort series. I can throw that on while I'm eating. I can throw that on when I'm doing nothing just to have on in the background, right? Rewatch all that stuff, right? But the revival, not the reboot. It's not a reboot. It's a revival because it's continuing from the original. I've seen season 1 of the revival, but that was also a case where I waited until all 10 episodes had been released, and then I binged it in one Saturday afternoon. And guess what? The same thing is about to happen with season 2 of the revival, because I haven't watched any of that either. And I love Frasier. I love it. Seriously. It's my favorite sitcom of all time. And I love sitcoms. Seriously. I have a sitcom addiction. I am a sitcom whore in that regard. Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it. But I haven't watched season 2 of the Frasier revival yet. And I've heard good things, and I'm trying to stay spoiler averse, even though I know there's some recurring characters that did return for season 2. But still, there is simply just too much shit to watch. And don't even get me started on movies, seriously, because I never saw Joker Folie à Deux, and I do want to see it at some point. I never saw that. I didn't see the Superman Christopher Reeve story, and that's on Max now, right? Or at least I don't know if it's on Max now or if it's going to be on Max, or maybe it is released on Max. So I can watch that now, right? I didn't see it in theaters when it was released. You know, the last movie I saw in theaters was Venom: The Last Dance. I did see that, and that was like a surprise. Like the week started, and it was like, oh, it's out this week. I think Scott reminded me when we were talking Penguin. It's like, wait a minute, the Venom: Last Dance is out this week, so I went and saw that, right? But I haven't seen Gladiator 2, and don't get me wrong, I was not one of the people that was necessarily asking for that sequel to exist, but clearly someone did, because I am not somebody that believes in no one asked for this. No, if it existed, someone clearly asked for it. And I've heard amazing things. I've heard so much as people say that Denzel Washington may earn an Oscar nomination for this, which, well, that's a strong statement with respect to that particular film, but I do want to see it. It's on the docket. I can't say that I have the same strong feelings for Wicked, because I never got into the musical, and that's a different thing. And I can't say that I'm like a massive fan of Ariana Grande or Cynthia Erivo. I don't have any issues with them. I just never got into any of that specter with that. I'm still, I'm older, so I grew up with the original Wizard of Oz film. I never even saw Oz the Great and Powerful, and that was shot here. That was shot in Detroit at the old Michigan Motion Pictures Studios that they had out in like the Pontiac area. Sam Raimi, when he came out to film that, I still haven't seen that. Still haven't seen that film. But so that's part of the backlog, or not Wicked, but like any of these other films that have just recently come out. Moana 2 is doing amazingly in theaters, right? It's made over $600 million and performing very well. I've heard some people say, I had a coworker say that they didn't necessarily care for the ending and that maybe the movie didn't necessarily need to exist, but people still have enjoyed it. And I can't watch it because I haven't even seen the first one. And do we want to talk about the backlog of animated Disney films that I haven't watched? Oh, Pixar alone, I'm about 10 back. Yeah, at least 10 back. And that includes like more recent stuff like Inside Out 2. I haven't even seen Inside Out 1 yet. I haven't seen the Frozen movies yet. How about that? Seriously. Honestly, there's just too much shit to watch. And maybe this is the curse of having a wide strike zone, of having so many interests and wanting to see so many things. I'll tell you one thing that I am not interested in seeing, and I don't really like to be negative about stuff, you know that, but I will just go ahead and throw this out there. I am not interested in Mufasa. I'm not. But if you heard way back in the day my review of the live-action Lion King, and that I did that was also on Squadcast Media, the Patreon that we had. We did the show called Fans Without Borders Plus Shit That Brent Won't Watch, because there were movies that Scott and I wanted to see over the summer of 2019 that Brent had no interest in seeing. And there were a number of movies that he and I both saw that we did dual reviews on. But then there were others that I saw that year that he didn't see, like Brightburn, and a few others. But like the Lion King 2019 live action animation movie was another one of them, and I didn't care for it because I still love the original animated, with the anthropomorphization, and all the human gestures and the eye movements and whatnot that, you see in the classic cel-shaded animation that are just completely sterilized and taken out of it when you try to make it look like National Geographic, like photorealistic shit. And I'm not interested in seeing a prequel with respect to that, in that vein. Now, if they made an animated prequel, an animated version of the film, akin to the original, that's a different story. Then I can see Mufasa's angry eyes, and I can see Scar's evil eyes and Simba's sad eyes, right? And all of that emotion will come back to me, right? That would be cool. But so that's not on the list. But there's just so much, right? Just stuff that's been releasing, stuff that's still going to release. Kraven the Hunter is out this week. Kraven the Hunter is out this week. And I've made no bones about it. If you want to call me a Sony Spider-Man universe apologist, hey, that's your business. You can go ahead. The fact of the matter is, at worst, those movies are meh. Madam Web was at worst meh for me. There were parts of it that I did like. There were parts of it that I was like, this isn't all that great. Same with Morbius. I don't care. I own the movies. Well, I don't own Morbius yet, but I will, and I own Madam Web. And I own the first two Venom films. I will own Venom: The Last Dance when that releases. Most certainly I will. And yes, of course, I like the Spider-Verse films. I have both of those as well. But either way, Kraven the Hunter, out this week. Gotta see it. I'm going to see it. That will probably be the next film that I see. And then, on top of that, Sonic the Hedgehog 3 is out next week, but I still haven't seen the first two of those movies, right? And yes, that does go back to my whole thing about how I didn't like how the VFX artists were effectively bullied into changing the design, even though, yes, the design that they changed to was better. And yes, I know there's a whole other host of reasons as to why that happened and what they did or whatever. I don't give a shit. I did not feel right about that back then, but I said, okay, eventually at some point, I'll watch them. I will. And obviously, I've got to watch the first two, which people have told me are really good, before I watch this third one that features Keanu Reeves with Idris Elba and whoever the voice actor is. I'm sorry, forgive me, I don't know who played. Wait, I gotta look this up. Who voices Sonic in those movies? Ben Schwartz, that's right. I had his picture in my head, but I couldn't remember his name. All right, so yeah, I gotta get caught up on those. There's just a lot to watch, everybody. And you know what? Like I said, I just detailed for you in each of my favorite franchises. I am behind on each of them. I'm behind on Star Trek. I'm behind on DC. I'm behind on Star Wars. I'm behind on Marvel. I'm even behind on Frasier. I'm behind on everything with respect to franchises. And I gotta pick somewhere to start and get out of this decision paralysis and just bowl through it, right? And just figure out exactly where I'm going to go and figure out exactly how I'm going to get caught up. Because seriously, there's too much shit to watch, if I haven't already said that 1,000 times in this particular episode. And I just got to fight my way through it. But don't feel bad if you also happen to be behind on shows or movies, right? Real life, work, family, whatever it is, definitely occupies your time, and you don't have the time that you thought you did to watch things or to play games or do whatever, right? And that's just how it is. It is what it is. All of this requires a time commitment, and if you don't have all the time in the world to watch everything, there's no reason for us to feel bad about it. I'm not saying anybody does, but sometimes I'm just like, well, damn, there's so much. How am I going to get through all of it? And I haven't even talked about, I could get into the Amazon stuff. I could get into the fact that I didn't watch The Boys Season 4 yet. And I also haven't watched Gen V, and The Boys Season 5 is on deck in that regard, right? I could keep going. I really could. But in one way, you can look at this and say, wow, there's just so much shit to watch. Where do we begin? But on the other hand, you can look at it positively and say, wow, we've got a ton of choices. There is a ton of content. We have options. There's a lot of shit that maybe 20, 30 years ago we didn't have the options to watch that we now most certainly have the options to watch. A wide variety of shows within our respective fandoms. I'm sure there's some of you out there that are Lord of the Rings fans that are still like, Ray, have you watched Rings of Power yet? Of course I haven't, but I would like to partake in it. And Anthony, I know that you are still holding out hope. There is an eternal flame out there, Anthony Dorsey, that you're hoping that at some point I will push everything aside and finally get caught up on Doctors 12 and 13, 14, and into the current one, Shurigawa, for 15, and Shurigawa, that is, right? I know you're hoping for that, and it's somewhere down the line on the list. Lord knows when I'll get to it, but working on it, apparently. I am a work in progress, even when it comes to ingesting and watching all of our favorite fandoms and all of our favorite franchises and material in that regard, right? Such is the price and the gift of having such a wide strike zone. So, with that in mind, I think I'm done grousing about this for one particular episode. It was a combination of, it was basically using my frustration of not being caught up on everything to basically go over some stuff that was going on, recent news or whatever that has happened, and talk about like all the stuff, all the content that we have the ability to watch at this point in time. But that'll do it for this particular episode of the Flightcast. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for supporting the Flightcast. Those of you that are still listening, those of you that are still supporting it out there, whether it's at Patreon or whether it's just listening to the shows and commenting and sending in feedback for the eventual Flight Chat episode that I'm going to finally get caught up on all of your feedback on. But of course, just to remind everyone, if you want to contact me, the Flightcast is on Blue Sky, Flightcast at BlueSky.com. Go to that, or is it .com? Oh, I don't think it's .com, actually. It's Blue Sky, or BSKY.app, to be honest with you. That's the web address that I've got here. But Blue Sky, the social media platform, is where I'm at primarily. The Facebook page for the Flightcast still is up, so you can also contact me there. And, of course, you can reach me by email at ray@theflightcast.com. I will figure out in the not-too-distant future here before Christmas what I'm going to do with all the flight chat emails that you guys have sent so that we can finally get caught up on that and then decide what we're going to do about feedback going forward, because I got some ideas on that as well. And again, there is a holiday-themed thing that by hook or crook, I'm going to start at patreon.com/theflightcast on Friday. It's going to be a thing that's going to lead up to Christmas. It's a 12-day special, if you will. So stay tuned for that, because I'm definitely going to be posting some stuff for that here in the next couple of days as well. But until then, and until next time, take care, stay safe out there, and I will see you all next time. Take it easy.